All right, so operative clauses are the trickiest of the paper because this is where the large amount of your detailing and focus should be going. A strong operative clause means that you are really pushing the committee forwards and you don't have to listen to those features of this is really important because, this is really important because, and you're actually talking about solutions and you've actually come to strengthen your resolution. Preamps help you construct the ideas behind your paper and give you general guidelines, but operatives give you a direct, almost step-by-step approach that will resolve the problem you discussed in your committee. For the purpose of our draft here, we have 3 preamp zeros, which we discussed earlier, and those are our definitions. We don't have to write operatives for our preamp zeros unless we are dramatically changing the definition. As an example, in the case of our child marriages, if we're going to modify the definition of child for child marriages to be including people under the age of 20 instead of 18 or 16, then we would need to create an operative clause for that. And it should be first because it would line up with our preamp zeros. There's no reason they should be hidden somewhere within the mix. If we're going to change the definition, that needs to go first. Generally speaking, operatives will be broken down by numerals, followed by letters, then by Roman numerals. If you're using Google Drive, it's really easy to set up. You go to this button right over here. It says the 1, 2, 3 with the 3 lines. You click on it, and then you find the one that applies to you, which is usually this first one. See the number, letter, Roman numeral. You may also go past the Roman numerals and use the normal numerals again, which is very common in detailed operatives, but not required. For this exercise, we'll jump down straight to our first set of preamps and operatives. Like I mentioned earlier, we were talking about education, so our first operative is going to be about education. The reason why is because we're not changing our definition. We didn't need to do that, so we don't need a preamp or an operative zero to address our preamp zeros. We're going straight to operative 1. This first line is this first word or set of words, depending on how it's going to be phrased, are going to be underlined, just how in our preamps the first word is in italics. So here we have respectively adding. It's going to be in italics because that is our preamp clause. Down here, when we have our operative, highly encourage, it's going to be underlined. You don't need to underline the full thing. You don't need to underline the first word of every single operative and sub-operative clause. It's only that first set. So highly encourage, and then for this one, strongly recommend. It's just so it's more articulate for your eyes and being able to find what you need to find. Here we're using words like encouraging, promote, and implement. You have a list of other words that are frequently used for operatives on the documents provided. Operative clauses are the actions taken by your committee, hopefully within the jurisdiction for you to enact. You can encourage, urge, promote many different kinds of policies, and it's important to look at what has been done in UN history to firmly grasp what affects your committee and what your committee can affect. Within the operatives, we see a development of the idea, including subclauses that further along your umbrella idea. As we see here, we have education. Now we'll promote education, fund education, advise its structure. You may even notice concerns for why something may not succeed or which can be included in a subclause, then addressed in a subclause. For example, here are education. We have expressed that education is a very important way to encourage women's rights and combat child marriage on a global scale. We address that in our preamps, but we kind of did that even further to implement it in our operative here. We then explained that the way we're going to do that is by promoting NGOs. We even provided examples. I personally like bolding my example NGOs. I like doing Girls Not Brides in bold. I like doing Equality Now in bold. And the reason why is that when it's presenting time and you're showing it up on the board, people will see it and be like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I see that NGO. I know you have an example and I don't have to go looking for it. Makes it easier for everybody, makes it easier for you as the presenter and for the people you're presenting to see it so much more clearly. So you have your list of NGOs here in your A, and then within that, what are we expecting those NGOs to do? And that's what the Roman numerals are, our sub-clauses. They install educational programs, they encourage notable policy changes, and they empower women in the workplace. That is the way you would structure a strong operative clause. The next one is advised advancement in online educational technologies, such as teaching softwares and virtual classrooms. We even explained what that would mean. This may include both general education and specifics on child marriage cultures. We broke it down to make a strong operative clause by implementing the format of this idea broken down, with our umbrella kind of holding it all together. Our first operative example mostly covers education. It's nice talking about education, especially in countries with the infrastructure to support it. But still developing countries may need the extra help of infrastructure, hence why we bring in our good pal, Operative 2. What we have here is a less detailed idea, but it is designed more so to strengthen your previous. It still takes action, and it's a different kind of action. It's not about education. But since our paper is focusing on education, infrastructure makes that even stronger. Your actual paper will not be highlighted with all these fun colors, like I may have mentioned, but I encourage keeping this formatting in mind. You see the yellow, the red, the yellow, the red. Other ideas for your operative clauses would be appointing people to new committees or creating new committees. You could break that idea further by addressing when, where, how these committees would meet, acknowledge how they differ from your committee, and maybe explain the different benefits of having additional committees. For this exercise, we focused more on education and infrastructure, so this can be taken in a million different directions. What we see here in our second clause is we're talking about that strongly recommend of expansive infrastructure. Because our previous one talked about online education, what about all the countries that can't even get it? And we even talked about in our preamble, what about those rural communities that we can't even reach to because they don't have roads, bridges, and virtual architecture? Like, they're just so out there. How are we going to get to them? That's what our second our second operative here is that it advances the development of roads, bridges, and buildings. It creates a way to have that online virtual access, and all supporting of that online aspect of our previous operative clause. I may not have mentioned in this video, but I do want to stress the importance that if you're going to have a point 1, have a point 2. If you're going to have a point A, have a point B. You need that buddy system. You need to keep your operatives with a second point. If you're going to have just this one clause, it just doesn't look nearly as strong, and people will feel that. If you have this, and say you didn't have any of that, that's fine. It would help to build your idea, but what you wouldn't want to do is underneath this idea go down and just have one line of one thing right there. It disrupts your flow, and it disrupts the strength of your overall operative clause. Yeah. Again, remember to address what is relevant to your preamps so the paper flows with the color coordination. You want to keep everything going with that flow. In the last video of this series, I want to talk more about those general tips and rules to keep in mind. So just bear with me here.